Now I've imported this into an empty project, and we're going to just see how it works. So in my main project, let's say Infinity PBR, I'm going to create a new folder, and we're going to call this Stats and Skills. Now you can call it whatever you'd like, but for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to call it Stats and Skills. Then I'm going to right-click, Create RPG Game, New RPG Game Scriptable Object. You might see less of these options there. I'm going to be removing them shortly. New RPG Data Scriptable Object. Go ahead and click that. I'm going to keep it named RPG Data. Now you'll notice a few things were automatically created for you. Those are also listed, or linked rather, here. Here we go, to these objects. Don't delete these. You need them, so please don't delete them. You're able to rename them, but I suggest not renaming them if you don't need to. The other option here is you can show help boxes. There's some descriptions of what everything does, and also there are the mastery names. Again, if you don't need to rename them, feel free not to. Otherwise, if you are going to rename them for something for your game, like if the mastery levels for a learned skill are not novice, expert, master, etc., then you can rename them. If you need more than 4, you might want to update the script a little bit. Right now it's hard-coded to 4. If you need less than 4, feel free to only use the ones you need and ignore the rest. It won't matter either way if you ignore the rest. So let's get right into what we have here. So I'm going to collapse this, load up this. Now let's explore each of these options. So we have character classes and character races. These are going to be things like knights and soldiers, or whatever your character classes are for your game. So I'm going to create a new one called Knight, and a new one called Paladin, and we'll make a Thief, and we'll make a Mage. Now each time I create one of these, you'll see this new folder here. Let's dig into that. You're going to see a scriptable object made for each one. Now there's a warning here, don't edit this directly. You can, but please don't. It's best not to unless you absolutely need to. And also, if you change the name to something else and you go back into the character classes here, you're going to get a warning here that the name was changed, and it will change the name back. If you want to change the name, change it here, and it will change the scriptable object name as well for you. Same for character races. I'm just going to change that back real quick. Now let's go into the character races, and we're going to name new races. These are going to be things like humans, dwarves, elves, or whatever you'd like. And one other thing, if you have enemies in your game, you can add those here as well. And I'm going to rename this. It should be singular probably. So I'm going to rename these, and as the classes, my scriptable objects that were created, again, don't edit them here, were also renamed. So character races. So you can create all the races for your enemies as well. So if you have a goblin knight, then they could be listed here as well as a player. Just, don't let your player choose to be that character. So there's some options if you think about it in a more broad sense, that these aren't just the main player character races and classes, but they could be the enemy races and classes as well, where you can keep all of those in one logical order. So let's look at these and dig into them a little bit. For the humans, we have, a bug. What's going on here? All right, I'll have to cut this part out of the tutorial video for sure. What is it saying here? No reference at 113 right here. Character, race, male names. Well, geez, there should be. Character race. Why wouldn't character race? Let's do a debug. Male names, length, and we'll just call this character log male name length. Just see if we should get the same error actually. But one other thing I'm going to do here, just confirm that we actually have male names. Can I do that? Yeah, let's see. And we'll clear this out. Oh, and it worked this time. Now that's odd. Not sure why that worked this time when it didn't before. Let's see if we can recreate that bug. names. Show names. No. Well, not sure why that bug happened. It's really odd because the names are, of course, part of the class here. So if the class is up, then the name should be up. Interesting. Well, I'll have to play more with that. I've not seen that bug before. Alright, let's go back to where we were. So let's dig into the character races a little bit. We have the option to show names. These are going to be default names, so you can be like Jim and add that here, and be Jenny and add that here. These are, you know, if you use this for your game, you might not, but in a character creation scene, maybe you're going to randomize the default names for a specific race. And so you can add those here. You don't have to. This is completely optional for your game. Same with the colors and the skin tones and the hair colors. For my game, you can customize the skin tones and the hair colors. And there's going to be some default skin tones and hair colors available. You can set those here simply by changing the skin tones here, choosing something, probably put the alpha up, and then adding a new, pressing plus here to add that, and then if you modify it later, you can always just go to that to modify it. If you're getting a whole bunch of skin tones, you can just do that and then make slight modifications to them. Whatever works for your project. So I'm going to close that. Again, that's optional. Then we're going to show the base skills, which we have none yet, and the base values, which we have none to add. What happens once I do that? So we can I gotta fix that. I'll fix that. So let's go over to the next section, or character classes. Character classes, similarly, we have some base options. We have whether this is a base class or not, and whether it has a parent class. If it does have a parent class, just type in the name there. I'm going to change that to a... actually, let's do that right now. I need to change this to a drop-down of those. So let's do that now. And we're going to do that by loading up character classes editor. So the editor script of that. And can't type parent class. All right, so this is the parent class. We don't want it to be a text field. We want it to be a drop down. And we need to get a list of the drop downs. I think I did that elsewhere. I'm a fan, if you have followed my stuff before, I'm a fan of copy pasting. So let me copy paste. But in order to do that, I think I'm going to need to add some skills in order to get a drop down that I can figure out where it is. So let's do a little bit more of the demo scene, or the tutorial. Alright, so let's look at the skill data objects. Currently there's nothing there, so we'll come right back to it, and then the stats and skills. Now this is where you're going to set up your actual stats and skills. Stats and skills in this project are kind of the exact same thing, but you set them up differently. So they could be a stat or a skill. Think of it as anything from something like your player's level and experience all the way through their stats, like might or wisdom or speed, and all the way through the learnable skills like arms master or fire magic or whatever it might be. And so I'm going to add a couple here just to illustrate some things. So we're going to experience, and this is going to be the player's experience, and I'll collapse that for now, and then we'll add something like might, maybe that's their strength, and magic, so their magic power, and then we'll add something that they can learn, such as arms master, and we'll do spell master, and maybe learning, and I'm going to add one called experience mod. I'm going to add that as well. Now each one of these, when they're expanded, you can set whether they can be trained. Now a skill can be trained if your player can learn it. This is generally something that's going to be exposed to the player. So experience mod is not. In this case, experience mod is going to be a modifier that I use behind the scenes to determine how much experience a player gets when they solve a quest or defeat a monster. For instance, the monster might have 100 experience points attached to it, but instead of giving the player 100 experience points, I'm going to give them 100 experience points multiplied by this experience mod. So I'm going to start by saying this cannot be trained. But it can be modified, because in the end, the modification might go up or down depending on other things in the game. So I'm going to start with this at 0, because currently, if for any modification, if it's 0, that means there's 0 modification. If it's positive, like 0.1, then that would be a 10% modification. If it's negative 0.1, then that would be a 10% reduction in the experience. So we're going to start with 0, but we keep this checked that it can be modified. These base values and base proficiencies are optional. Generally, they might not be set here, but in essence, the math that I would suggest you use will be equal to points plus base value times base plus all the other modifications that go into it, and then multiplied by the proficiency. So points and base value are added together, but points is exclusive to this default. So we'll get that in a second. So going back to experience can't be trained. It can't be modified either, because in this case, we're going to start with 0. In this case, experience is something that you can earn, but it can't be modified by other things. My math in the game might say experience plus equals 100 times experience mod, maybe 110 in that case. So this points would go up to 110, but this isn't something that can be modified. That value can't be modified by other things. Let's look at these two stats, might and magic. These are stats, so they might be exposed to the player, but they can't be trained. You can't get stronger in your might, becoming a might novice to expert or anything, but they can be modified by other things, so I'll leave those as they are. And in this case, let's just start our default values at 10. You might start that at a different value, but this again is going to be something the player can add to over time. Maybe they drink a potion and the default base points go up by a little bit. Now these three, I'm going to say these are learnable skills, something that the player can learn one way or another. So they can be trained and they can be modified. The value of these skills might be modified. Now in my game, the player is going to have skill points, and each one will start at 1, but over time as they level up, they can assign more skill points to different learned skills. So I'm going to leave those as 1, and these base values, I'm going to leave those as 0 as well. So I've set up a whole bunch of stats or skills, different types of stats or skills. Now I'm going to go into my skill data object. Now you can get these from these as well, just by clicking here, or you can go into the skill data objects, and you're going to see a list of all the learnable stats or skills available. Now again, you can modify things, but I suggest that you do not modify things. You can really mess it up if you do, so don't modify things there. Instead, we're going to look at all of these. So I'm going to look first at the learning. And my learning, we can see that I've got some hard-coded things that might help you for your game. It might not help you, but if you do use it, you can mark whether something is an equip skill. For my game, it's something like, sword or a gun or a shield, or a magic skill like fire magic, or in your game is sci-fi, it might be some sort of psionic magic or something like that. Maybe you don't call it magic, but in this case, it could be magic. Again, you can show the full inspector, but please don't change those unless you absolutely know what you're doing. And so in this learning skill, we have a few options. Right now, if you expand these, we can only change the cost and the description. Now you can ignore these for your game if you're not going to have a cost or if you're not going to have a description, but they're here for in case you want to set those up and use them. The thing about skills that you can learn is they modify other things. So in this case, learning, we're going to modify the experience mod. So I'm going to add that there, and you get now a whole lot of other options, and it might be a little daunting at first, but let's go through it. If you click any of these X's and confirm that you want to delete it, then it will be deleted from all of them. So let's re-add that there. What this is basically saying, I'm going to collapse these for simplicity's sake, is that at the novice skill level, this learned skill will have an effect on this experience mod stat or skill. It's going to add to the base value right now 0 and the base proficiency 0. And then you can also add to, and let me collapse that, to the value per skill point. So again, earlier I mentioned that in my game, and perhaps your game, these learned skills going to have points that the player can assign to. So this may change throughout the game. And so right now it's at 0.1, but let's say the player adds to 0.2, and so they add one more skill point. Now that value is 2. So what we're saying in this object, in the learning object, is that per each of those skill points that the player has in learning, we're going to modify experience mod by a certain value. So for me, in this game, I'm going to do it by 0.01. So that's going to be a 1% increase in proficiency of experience mod for every single learning skill value. You can also do it per level. Now this is going to be per player level. If that's something in your game, and a lot of times it's going to be 0. So I'm going to keep that as 0 because it's a 0 for my game as well. But I do want to add a base value of 0.09 so that when the player learns the learning skill, their experience mod is instantly going to be modified by 10%. In the math in my game, that means that the experience the player gains will be modified by 10% in the positive direction. So instead of 100, they'd get 110 experience points. Now, what happens when the player upgrades their mastery of learning to expert? That's where this comes in, and we can set those same values here. So instead of 0.09 and 0.01, I'm going to say it's 0.18 and 0.02. So that's a doubled value. Now, instantly, as soon as they upgrade from novice to expert, they're going to get a bigger boost to the skill mod, or to the experience mod rather. And I'm going to do the same thing for these as well. Just triple it, so 0.27 and 0.03, and then quadruple it to 0.36 and 0.04. So at the base stat or skill, let me go back. At the base skill value of 1, the point value of 1, they'd get a 40% boost to experience. But if they were at level 10, then they'd get 36 plus 0.4, so 76% boost. So that's how you set those up there. Let's do one more here. This is an example. I'm going to select my might, and we're going to say that this is going to affect... no, I'm not going to... I'm going to accept my arms master. I'm going to say that this is going to affect the might. I'm going to add that. And again, you can add these things here. So I'm going to say instead of no base values, I'm just going to say you're going to get an extra might for every single skill point in arms master that you have. And for expert, I can do the same, just a little higher. We'll say 2. And again, for the master and grandmaster, just make them a little sweeter so that they go up even more. And that means that in my math, I can simply compute the final value, and there will be some, check out the other video for scripting examples. Some final values will be expanded as the player increases their arms master skill. One thing to note is that you can, of course, nest these. In theory, Spellmaster might increase the efficiency of learning. So if we did that, now every time you increase your Spellmaster skill, you might actually increase your proficiency in learning. And if that's the case, every time you do learning, which now cannot affect Spellmaster, learning becomes more powerful if you're also a Spellmaster. That's a sort of a tough thing to visualize, but you can imagine how something like wisdom may be affected by a few things, and something how you might nest a couple things together. For instance, bodybuilding might affect your endurance, and your endurance might affect your hit points. And so if you get the bodybuilding skill, you might affect your hit points in the end. We'll test that exact example out in the video about how to use it with some scripting examples. Finally, let's go back to the stature skills, and we can see some changes to these. We can see now that learning is affected by one other stature skill. In this case, branch 0 is Spellmaster. That means direct. And then Spellmaster is not affected by anything, but magic, but experience. Well, experience was modified by something, right? Oh no, experience mod. And experience mod is now affected by two different things on branch 0 is learning, and branch 1 is spellmaster. That means that spellmaster affects learning, which affects experience mod. Now, if you had multiple things coming into this, and the branches can go down to infinity, if you had multiple things coming into it, they're not going to be mapped one-to-one here, but it's just giving you an idea that, oh yes, these are affected. Now, if I were to say that spellmaster is no longer a trained skill, it will remove these from other things. It will give you a warning, but don't toggle it off unless you know you're going to do that. And same thing with experience mod. If I'm going to say it can't be modified, I don't want to toggle that off unless I know I'm going to remove these settings. Now let's go to our RPG character races again, and let's look at our other options here. Base values are going to be base values that maybe this character can learn at the beginning of the game. So let's say that they can learn Arms Master and Spell Master at the beginning of the game. You just add those there. It adds them to the list. And I've got a bug. Clearly I have a bug. Interesting. So let's fix that right now. I think I'm going to end up redoing this video, by the way, to make it a little bit more clean. But it's helpful to practice, so... let's see, we're going to look up character races, the editor script here. So I'm going to go to the character races editor and find add new. A couple of places. We've got add new, a few places. So let me just look up exactly where in this it lives. Where in the races. Base skills, that's right. Go to writer. Hide base skills. Alright, so add new should be somewhere down here. XX and add new. When we click that, we go to this. Aha, new base skill index. That's the problem here. Is when we add the index, we're probably adding just the index of the skills, not excluding the ones that can't actually be learned. So, all skills, stat or skill, new base skill. That's why right there. So, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix that? New base skill index equals pop-up, new base index displayed options, base skill options. Okay, so what we're going to do, instead of taking this, let's just do that. No. What is base skill options? It returns a string array. So what we really need to do is get the stat or skill of that. So I believe I've got that somewhere. So if we go to characterrace.rpgdata.races.rpgdata.stat or skills and find get skill by name, then we'll do character new base index. Can we do that? Oops, if I spell it right. Yes. So what we're doing here is we're going to get the skill by this name. Now this name is going to be not the same index as the actual one. This is why we need to separate this out. And that's going to get the... See, so I'm going to keep this a little simpler by just saying stat or skill, stat or skill, and we'll assign that there, and then we'll say clone data, stat or skill. So we're going to clone this as the new one. Let's check if that works. I think I'm going to have to add that same modification to the other script for character classes. But let's see now. We have our 3 options that we can learn. Add new, Arms Master, there we go, Spell Master, and Learner. And one thing we need to, well, it's not that big of a deal. I don't think anyone's going to really, might. But I could, as a thing, I could update this to remove things that are already in the list. Can we do that? Can we do that? Let's see. Let me change this or add this to the character classes editor as well first, before we get too deep into something else. Alright, so we're going to say is on base skills, is on base skills. Alright, I'm going to move this note to myself. Classes. Okay, and then clone data, SS, move this. I think I need to move this undo directly above this portion here. I need to do that over here as well. Alright. Now, what I want to try to see if I could do is exclude the ones that I've already learned. So I would do that in this method. And that would require a little bit more. So I'm going to ignore that for now. It's not that important. It won't cause any real issues if somebody does add double. Alright, so looking back at here, show base skills, so we can add base skills. Oh, or we get an error. Okay. Find classes. How are we? All skills. Is all skills not assigned? Check all skills. 2 matches. Okay, so we need to make sure this is not commented out. I'm not sure why it was commented out. Who knows? Mysteries of the universe. Let's see, can we add these now? We can. Alright. Arms Master, Spell Master, Learning, and we can remove them. Perfect. Show values. So just since I've abandoned making the demo video, I'm gonna pretend I am doing it for you. So let's see. There's tooltips. That's nice. So as the tooltip says, these are the amount by which this class can modify any stat or skill that is marked can be modified. The base value will be added to the point value by the stat and skill, and the final value will be multiplied by the proficiency amount. In other words, if your character is a knight, you could say that, oh, all knights have a boost of might by 2 and 0.1. So not only do they get a base value %2 plus points, but they also get a 10% boost. But maybe they get a negative 10% boost to all magic. So they're just less proficient with magic. And you can do similar things with other things. So let's say you're in your races and you've got an elf, and elves are going to be really good at learning. So you're going to give them a 0.2 or 20% boost to all learning. That means their learning skill, if they've acquired it in the game, will be 20% more effective. And that means they'll also get a boost to experience mod. So that means they're going to get more experience points just by default. So that's how you can nest these together in various ways. That's all there is to it. That's how you set this up. And it's pretty simple in the end. Let me know what you think. I think this is going to be a pretty helpful script system for a lot of folks. It's something that can be scripted really easily. You just have to link into this RPG data, and then you get access to all of these. So I'm going to make another video with scripting examples. I'll add it to this project where there's going to be some scripting examples on how you can code with this in your actual game, and there's going to be some helpful methods there for doing the math on the final values, getting the final values out, and adding to the final values and all that. But once you link into this, you've got access to all of these, and if you have access to all of these, then you have everything you need to script with this. So, all right, let me know what you think, and thanks for watching this video on scripting and this new stat or skill project that I'm working on, this module. All right, thanks.